elephant's got its trunk up, I see. It's good luck.
Oh shit, yeah. That's why we got it. I didn't get it.
Of course you didn't.
There's no such thing as luck. It doesn't bring good luck.
That's interesting. There's no such thing as luck.
There's no such thing as luck, and there's no such thing as karma.
You know all there is?
There's no such thing as karma.
The only thing there is causality.
Yeah.
There's a causal web. Something happens and leads to the next thing.
There's causality and there's entropy, therefore chaos.
So you can look back and go, wow, everything that got me to where I am now, it was fate or it was predestined.
Yeah. There's a linear arrow of time. Mm-hmm. That therefore there's entropy, and therefore there's causality.
Yeah.
Nothing.
So if you look back on everything that's led up to where you are now, you could either choose to look at it as this was written for me, I got here because, this is what was predestined for me. Or you could look at it as, wow, I'm here now. Like, obviously, everything that I've been through up until now has led to me to where I am. None of it was written, none of it was predetermined.
Exactly. No, there's no karma, there's no destiny, or there's no fate.
Although we'd like to believe so.
It'd be nice. You know what? It's like a nice...
It's just one of those little warm delusions,
Yeah. It's almost like... It almost feels intuitive, though, to believe that there is something there. To believe that... You know what? It's a comfort thing. It's like a security blanket to think that, you know what? No matter how shit my life is right now, it's... I'm going through this to lead me to something better, There's grass is always greener,
Yeah.
But yeah, it's all random. It's one big mess.
So you guys went to see Michio Kaku the other day?
Yeah, man. That was really good, really good. He's down doing a book tour. He's got a new book out, The Future of the Mind, it's called.
So those who don't know who Michio Kaku is, he's probably one of the leading, well, I suppose definitely one of the most vocal physicists in the world today.
For sure.
Even what I do go broader to say is one of the more vocal and in the public eye scientists.
That's one of his big missions, as well as being a leading theoretical physicist and futurist and all that. He's all about promoting scientific understanding
on a general scale. So, well, he's got a few Times bestseller books. So he's bringing science and physics and stuff like that to the mainstream, which is
I remember him saying,
which is what we're all about too. It's hugely important
for sure. I remember him saying on Friday that I don't know when, but back in the day they said that the word physics, might be in science, but I think it was the word physics will never make it into the New York Times bestseller list. And he goes, now I've done it twice.
Of course, those two books, Physics of the Impossible and Future Physics, I believe.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
I've read Physics of the Impossible. I haven't read the other one, but yeah, he likes to take technologies of today and extrapolate of what they'll be like in the future, 50, 100, 500, 1,000 years from now.
Yeah, I remember you showed me that book, Physics of the Impossible, right?
Yeah.
And as he just said, talks about hypothetical, based on what we know now of science, hypothetical technologies that we will be able to use. And he goes into all stuff you would know from science fiction, like time travel and wormholes to be able to travel from one side of the universe to the other.
Artificial intelligence and traveling, how humans could travel through space theoretically.
And he applies scientific, mathematics and science to it to show how it could be plausible in the future.
Yeah, so he does look at science with this kind of childlike enthusiasm, and that kind of sci-fi kind of. I think he's got is it sci-fi physics or something like that? He's got a show on. Yeah, he's got.
I was going to say, he's doing pretty well for himself. I've seen him on Discovery Channel a fair bit.
Oh, yeah, he's on Discovery Channel. He's got books and stuff. And, well, I suppose scientifically, his pedigree's stronger than you think as well. He's actually one of the co-founders of string theory. Like, one of the first people to kind of start writing the mathematics.
Yeah.
And so I suppose, I don't know, we could brush over what little we know about string theory. He kind of brushed over it. Not something you can really brush over. But the ideas of string theory, is that that's getting in the way of that foot in there?
That's fine.
Just trying to change the subject because I'm not quite comfortable talking about string theory.
No, I remember Lawrence Krauss. You know Lawrence Krauss. Everyone knows Lawrence Krauss.
Of course.
I remember hearing him say, "I'll give you a brief rundown on the history of string theory." Because one day, one physicist said to another physicist, "Hey, imagine if everything in the universe was made out of tiny little vibrating strings." And the other physicist said, wow, that's amazing. What would that imply? And he goes, I don't know. So that's the history of string theory up until now.
Basically, string theory is one of those theories that theoretically does explain the universe, but is impossible to observe. So you can't test string theory because the fundamentals of it go beyond what we can observe. As far as I suppose the theory of string theory is that every particle in the universe, right, and in any universe, is not a single particle, but rather a particle in a moment of time on these huge vibrating strings, and these vibrating strings transcend the observable universe. They're like another dimension. So these strings exist on these higher dimensions, and when you slow down this vibration enough, you get to a level where matter behaves like matter. So in our universe, matter behaves very specifically. We have the laws of physics, yeah? As you go up the vibratory scale, I suppose, those particles might act differently. So our universe is I suppose, one segment of those vibrating strings. Something along those lines.
Yeah. Look, I remember him talking about using like a musical analogy and talking about how they're almost like vibrating strings that work together harmoniously. That they look. I don't know enough about it to talk about it in too much detail, but it's one of the most it's the theory. It's one of the most complex theories going around, right?
Yeah, I suppose. Well, it's that because it brings in the multiverse, and apparently string theory can only be understood in 11 dimensions. So basically, what that's saying is we exist in 3 dimensions. Yeah, we've got space is 3D, and then you've got time. That's I suppose the 4th dimension in a way. But the idea of string theory is that inside our dimensions or parallel to our dimensions are alternate dimensions, where if these vibrating strings are vibrating, their frequencies are so much different than matter in the universe, then they just fit within another dimension. So we can never access them with today's technology or theoretically ever. But still, the reason why so many prominent scientists believe in string theory is because the mathematical models of it seem perfect, and all of the subatomic particles that we have uncovered do fit within the framework of this theory. So, I suppose you can't disprove it, but you can't prove it. So, as far as we know, it will remain a theory for some time. But like the Big Bang Theory, but the Big Bang Theory holds a lot of weight because of the gamma radiation. We know we can observe so many things that lead to quite a firm understanding of how our universe began. Yeah.
But if you're talking about string theory, Kaku's the man. He knows what's up.
Yeah.
In a big way. You know, the most interesting thing that I reckon he spoke about last week was he talks about the future of one thing that actually plucked the cord a little bit. You know, he said, I'm sorry to tell everyone this, but it may be very possible or very likely that we will be the last generation to die. And everyone was like, what? And he explained it, and he said that with modern advances in neurotechnology, being able to program or more map out the human like neural web, I suppose you would call it, like map the brain completely, map everything that's going on in the brain, they may be able to get to a point when they can program download your consciousness onto a computer, essentially. And to the point where you'll be able to load someone's consciousness, someone who's been long dead, and be able to have a conversation with them, because when you load them up, all of their memories are in there, all of their social connections, everything's still programmed into them. They're probably not able to take on any new content, but you know what? You are now. That will be completely mapped, and you'll be able to have a conversation to the capacity that you are able to now.
Basically, we're ages from this technology, but he uses the Human Genome Project as an example of how technology well, in this case, genetics, right? We've mapped the human genome. So we've looked at the DNA strand, at the chromosomes of a human being, and we're slowly mapping out all the sequences, all the gene sequences that make a human. We're uncovering the blueprint of how to make a human, so to speak. And we're to the point where we're pretty much there, you know. There's a few genes and there's a few pockets here and there missing or that require a lot more research. But as far as what goes into the DNA strand of a human, and I'm assuming that would make understanding other life forms, you know. But that's gotten to a point where you could theoretically have all the information that is like how to build a Travis or how to build a Josh on a disc, right? And that would have all the information, so you could plug that into a computer, a cloning machine.
Mine was like a 2-disc box set.
What a fascinating.
You know what though? Like if with advancing cloning, if you're able to clone humans, and I'm sure they'll be able to 100 years from now, I'm sure there'll be no problem.
There's a next step,
and if you're also able to program the consciousness, future generations.
But that's a big step. That's what I think that what he wanted to impose was that there's a huge step between. So I could theoretically put in this disc that has a person, all their genome on it, right? So you put in the disc, I make a clone, right? And you have the exact genetic clone of that person, that copy. But they don't have any of the memories, any of the thoughts, any of the consciousness, any of the personality of that person, because that is the neural net of the brain. That is not in your genes, right? That comes from you experiencing the world, right? And developing your brain. So for that to happen, for to be able to copy your consciousness, so now we're talking to synthesize consciousness. So to make a digital copy of someone's consciousness, or I suppose you could look at the other side of it, to create a robotic consciousness, like artificial intelligence, you need to understand 100%, well, we'll say the human brain, yeah, as an example, 100, because the human brain's made up of 100 billion neurons. So that's 100 billion sensors that connect to each other. And they're all firing off in their complex ways, right? And we know a lot about the brain. We know a lot about different parts of the brain for different parts of thought. We kind of understanding how memories are formed, how dreams are kind of formed, how visions, everything, how the brain works. We're getting a firm understanding. And if you could record someone's brain, which you can do now, he actually one of the most impressive things he talked about was a study that has been done on mice. Basically, they recorded a mouse's memory. So they put electrodes on a mouse's brain and they gave it a simple task, right? Learning how to drink water from a special drip. So they'll put these electrodes on and it record what the brain's doing, the electromagnetic frequencies of this mouse's brain while it was performing these tasks, right? So they recorded that, kept it on file, and they left the mouse alone. A mouse has a short-term memory, so they left the mouse alone to the point where it would have forgotten these specific skills of how to drink from this water bottle. Then what they did was they put the electrodes back on and they replayed the memory.
Well, and the mouse. Just clarify, what they did was they hooked it up to the section of the brain, the hippocampus, which is the section of the brain where memory is stored in mice, obviously. So what they did was. So they'd record what was happening when he initially learnt that task, and then
played it back. And when it was played back, obviously through the hippocampus, then through the neurosystem, the mouse was able to perform these tasks
immediately knew it again. A memory that was lost, being reprogrammed back into the mind.
So obviously, a mouse is a lot less complex than a human brain. A mouse's brain is a lot less.
So they're going to try to work with this experiment and eventually start testing on chimpanzees, and then. In the short term, then there'll be Alzheimer's patients, people with short-term memory loss, and be able to essentially eliminate memory loss altogether, which is massive.
So if you think of that, if you can find a way to successfully record someone's thoughts, someone's memories, someone's emotions, right, and you have that on file, then that is you. As if you ask the big question, who are you? It is not. I mean, the individual cells in your body get reproduced all the time. You know, you could cut off a hand, and I mean, it's not really a part of you. A sense that the essence of you comes from your personality, your consciousness, right? That is what makes you you. If you were a brain dead, that you could argue that it's not really you, you know? If you took...
Okay, hypothetically, I don't know if you went into it, but if you were to record someone's consciousness, is there any capacity for new input or retention of information, or is it simply as it was when recorded?
Well, it'd have to be as is as recorded. You can't... I think if you were to... Okay.
There's no self-learning systems that could be created.
Well, if there was, that's a whole different kettle of fish. It depends. Who knows where the technology would go?
If that was the case, who was to say you couldn't take from other people's...
Yeah.
Or just say you take my
super...
True. If you still there's nothing, imagine everyone's consciousness was stored onto one database, and then you made this one clone and put it all in there.
You'd be the most wise person.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it would be. And it's not. It's not physically impossible. You know, it's not physically impossible. That's what he was saying. So you could have this one disc. You know, you start disc 1 would be how to build a clone of you, and then disc 2 would be your consciousness. So you could put that. And I say a disc because he used that example, but he also used the example. You could put it on a laser beam. You know, you could use a radio wave and transmit your consciousness, transmit all your personalities,
He was talking about talking about long traveling through space, right? They say that it would take something ridiculous like 4 million years to get to the closest star system to Alpha Centauri.
Well, it depends. Like the closest star, Alpha Centauri,
based on modern day space travel techniques. But that's what they're saying. If you were able to program consciousness onto like a laser beam, you could hypothetically beam consciousness out to the far reaches of outer space, and that's space travel right there in a way, I suppose.
I suppose.
But there's no.
Yeah, I know, but I suppose we're jumping ahead. I mean, I suppose the more immediate ramifications that it would have, I think we'd get to cloning a human on Earth before we got to that level where we try to beam that consciousness out.
For sure. It's just I get tangled up in his ideas.
Yeah,
the
primary, I suppose,
objective.
No, the primary objective, I suppose, would be to extend life. And if you could reboot a system, just say I'm an old man getting frail and all that, but I've had these electrodes recording my consciousness, right? Kept on recording ever since I started it. Ideally, you'd want it from the day you were born. You'd want your consciousness to be recorded, right? And then when you die, they could boot up a system, make a new version of you, right? And then put that chip in, or put that boot your consciousness back into it. And you're living again. You get to theoretically again.
So backed up your brain on iCloud.
Yeah, exactly.
Make sure you are deleting history that you don't want.
Josh, have you backed up your brain this week?
Oh man, I'm on the cloud again.
Man.
You know what though? So
I keep accepting cookies and I hate it.
So think about that, right? So say they've got your DNA, they can clone you as you could say to them, you know what? I want my 25-year-old body back. You know, when you're an old man, they can program your consciousness now of an old man back into your 25-year-old body. Yeah. Therefore, eliminating death.
This is all possible.
So, as he said, this is possible within the next few generations. Therefore, we could be one of the last generations to actually die. Because future generations will be able to simply reprogram their consciousness onto a brand new vehicle, a brand new body, and with their mind just programmed back into a new vehicle, a fresh body.
Because that's all you are. You are the culmination of all your thoughts, feelings, and memories. That's who you identify as. Now, the problem with death is that we have no way of storing all that, you know? It's either in the brain or it's nowhere. If you can take it out of the brain and put it on a disc, then we have eternal life. Like, that's basically...
Doesn't that scare you, though, to think that, all right, 2 generations from now, they're going to look back
I wouldn't say 2 generations. I'd say...
You know. Okay, hypothetically. We'll say 100 years from now, right? It could be a few generations. That's what he said. It could be possible that it's within a few generations.
Oh, it'd be mighty impressive. Yeah.
Mighty impressive, but if it was the case, say even if it's 1,000 years from now, they're still going to be able to look back and say, oh my God, those people back then, they only had a finite life. They knew.
How scary it would have been knowing that they were going to die.
They're aware they only had... You know, if they're lucky 100 years to live and they had to squeeze everything into that one life, what kind of a life would that have been if you knew that you were going to die? How did they do it? Which is kind of scary to think that we do. We have this finite life that we have to make the most of it.
How unfortunate would we say
they have the freedom.
To future
future
Yeah,
generations have the
generations.
freedom to be able to know that this ride's going on forever. I can pace it out. I can do whatever I want, because at the end of this body's life, what's in here gets to live on in a fresh, new, younger body. Man,
But
Imagine how intelligent you could become if
well,
you
the
could
thing
just
is that that's the thing. If
go
we get,
to a really young body and then just live that life out again. And
well, that's through the, I suppose, the basic model of the brain, how it would work. Yeah, you have to go through another lifetime to have another lifetime of experiences. But if you have this technology of being able to, so if this technology was viable, then obviously we have such an amazing knowledge of how the human brain works. Well, we could enhance that. You could say, okay, I'm gonna program a photographic memory to myself, or I'm gonna program every time I read something. Oh yeah, I suppose a photographic memory, anything. I can. Your powers of deduction can be tenfold. Your powers of logic, you can just increase them. You know, you want to be more right-brained, you can switch that on. You want to be more left-brained, I can be more artistic. I can enhance my my visual cortex, so I could see. You know, you could. I suppose the possibilities are endless for what you could do in bioengineering in the future.
Have you ever seen those? I think I've seen some documentaries on those people who have a complete photographic memory from their entire life. You could ask them, where were you 20 years ago at this exact time, and they'll be able to tell you, I was eating this, and I was up to, this is what I had left. This is what I had left on my plate during this meal. You know, like that specific. I was actually reading that. It's interesting. What's going on there? They don't have some sort of super memory power, right? They have the exact same brain capacity as everyone else, but the mechanism in their brain that makes them forget is actually damaged.
So forgetting is a survival
It's almost
instinct.
like what they said was they've forgotten how to forget, which is interesting. Yeah, as you said, forgetting is it's almost to help you
take in new information.
Yeah, exactly.
So forgetting, it's like
not become clouded with
put
all
it this way.
the...
Imagine your desktop, right? And everything every document you opened, every website you went on, like started to clutter up your desktop, right? Call your desktop your short-term memory. Some of the things on your short-term memory are important to you. Keep clicking on them. Okay, I'm going to save this to my hard drive. That becomes your long-term memory. But every now and again, you don't need all that short-term memory. You clean up your desktop. So that's kind of how the brain works, in a sense that it doesn't need all the stuff that you've come in contact with everywhere, because if you needed it more, you would access it more. You'd access that brain state more, and it would slowly, that neuropath, because every single thing you do fires off a very specific neuropath, whether it's a neuropath or a neuronet. If it's a more complex task, then it would fire up more parts of the brain. So the more you access it, the stronger that neuronet gets, and it starts making other connections. It's like really organic in the way that it just spreads out and reinforces itself. But if something is something fleeting, like someone will say something to you, or you hear a joke, well, you don't need it if you don't necessarily go over that joke over and over again. Well, then your brain simply that neuropath that had fired, or that memory just fades away, never to be, and you, in some instances, you could never remember it again. But it's still I think it's amazing that you can still recall something. Have you ever had someone's reminded you of something you haven't had a thought? You haven't thought about it.
Hasn't been fully deleted.
Like,
it's like a recovery file in there.
Exactly.
You know what though?
Yeah.
At the time, I often find this with music, right? Especially like lyrics of songs that I haven't heard in 10, 15 years. And I hear it, and I can sing along first shot. I know it so well, and that's because when I originally knew that song, I did rehearse it often. I did give it the time to put it into my long term memory. I haven't rehearsed it since then, but it's still in there somewhere. I did make the jump
so at
from
some
short
stage.
term.
It did.
I made the jump from short term to
long-term.
long term, but I haven't rehearsed it since then, so it's still in there.
But I suppose if I gave you a 10-digit number. And then told you another 10-digit number, then the first series would be gone forever.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
exactly. Because I could go over that one 10-digit number, similar to a phone number.
But you can keep going over it, like a phone number, exactly.
And remember
and eventually you remember it, and you'd never forget it,
Yeah.
But if you were to give me two at once, no, I'd lose the first one.
Yeah, so memory, but it's not really by choice sometimes. That's how amazing the brain is. some memories it will pick for you. If a memory has a dramatic emotional connection to something happen. If your body feels something so intensely with a memory, then that might sit around longer and stuff. Who knows? We're on the cusp of making these understandings about memory and stuff like that. It's an exciting time.
Well, neuroscience is still a very young field. Where it's up to now, it's still beginning. You know, they're only really beginning to understand all of the inner workings of the brain. And once they do that, once they understand all of the connections that are made in the brain, then the possibilities are endless.
And once again, we can thank science for this, because if you ask questions about consciousness, in the past, it's been philosophers who have had to tackle these questions, because we didn't really understand where consciousness really came from. But as science advances, as neuroscience, biology, genetics, as these fields gain more knowledge, then things go from philosophy and kind of filter into science, and we can actually study this. And Michio Kaku, his latest book is The Future of the Mind. So he takes a physicist's point of view of the brain and consciousness and where the brain will go in the future, as far as how we can enhance it and things like what we've been talking about. So that's what I love when science kind of takes over and starts doing some real empirical research and starts answering these questions that before science, the same questions have been around for millennia, getting nowhere closer to any kind of truth, you know?
Yeah, it was all a mystery then.
Yeah.
That's it. That's why science is it's an ongoing process. There's no...
Yeah. It's not the answer, but it's a process that uncovers answers.
Right.
Yeah.
That's it. So we'll see. Hopefully in our life, think about it. Within our lifetime, within the next 50 years or so, we're going to see some crazy stuff go down. We're going to see some advances in, especially new fields like neuroscience. Not new, but it's, booming fields now.
The way technology, just thinking about,
we're going to see some
human
lifespan. Change the game altogether.
Human lifespans are relatively similar to what they have always been. We've gone, obviously the lifespan has gone up, yeah. But it's still like generations. It's still a constant kind of generational thing.
Yeah.
But the evolution of technology and science is an exponential growth. So what I think you're going to get is this more and more of a fear. Like one generation is going to have more and more of a fear of the generation that comes after, because of there'll be, in one lifespan, there'll be such a huge change in technology. So we obviously, our parents look at certain aspects of today and they find it like, it's kind of scary because it's the unknown, There's going to be more and more of that because technology is going to go so quick, and people you stay within your time, you stay it's only the younger people who tend to adopt the new technologies and stuff like that. And if technologies are going so quickly, you're going to get an increase in that, people going, oh no, like feeling like they're being left behind,
This is an interesting time though now, because as you're saying about parents or grandparents that we have that are almost frightened by new technology. Like I bet all of our grandparents wouldn't know what the internet is. They wouldn't want to go near it. They wouldn't want to touch a computer because, what, I've lived too long without it. I don't need that shit now.
Yeah.
So, but this generation, all kids are grown up now with an iPad in front of them, or they're surrounded by it. They're immersed in it their whole lives. So do you think it will continue that way, that older generations don't understand the new technology, or do you think the younger generations now will continue to adapt and continue to
No, because there'll always be newer technologies. That's my point.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is, with children who are brought up technologically minded, will they have the capacity to adapt to it?
But there's always been technologies.
Yeah, okay.
Not to the extent there is today,
they're
though.
I suppose technologically minded is okay, I suppose it's in the context of technology.
So do you think we'll get to a point when kids have got devices that we're like, I don't want to know about that because that's too, no?
Definitely. Wow. And our children will have children and they'll be freaked out by their kinds of devices. There's always because that's the technology it's an exponential growth. It gets quicker. It's getting quicker and quicker. The amount of new technologies and new fields and stuff like that.
It's going to be interesting to see where it goes.
Yeah. Very interesting.
It's like I work with a lady at work, and she explains to me how her children get to play on the iPad and stuff like that. And I think when I was a kid, like the most cutting edge of technology back then was like the Sega.
Yeah.
But then,
which you couldn't save games on or
anything. Talk to your
anything.
parents about they were a kid when
That's
and
it.
when the Sega
When
came
television
out,
was
they
just
would have
coming
gone,
in.
oh, my kid's playing Sega. When I was a kid, I grew up with a hula hoop, and then their grandparents are going, oh, look at these hula hoop. When I grew up, it was a stick. You know.
Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think?
Before that,
Do you think parents these days, because obviously, like, technology can if overused, it can destroy kids' social skills, and if kids. Do you think parents have an ethical responsibility to limit how much young children use iPads and computers and video games?
I do.
Yes, but so you say social skills, right? Social comes from society. You know what I'm going with this.
I do. That's why I want to correct myself.
The word social obviously is a throwback to society. So if a kid is socially aware, he's aware of society, right? He can fit in with society. Now, if society is changing and these kids, while to our generation they seem socially ill-equipped well, in society of the future, they're perfect for it. If society is moving on to this social network type thing, then they're quite adept in the way that they are, submerged in these social networks. We're kind of the ones out of society. So we're in 50 years, we'll be unsocial because society has evolved into something different.
That's
there's no objective how society should be. And this is what we've gone. I mean, hunter-gatherer to big cities, and now you're moving into this social network connectivity. So
society is also a process.
Yeah, society is a process.
There's no destination. We're just this is where we are right now, and who knows where we're going to be.
And that's why I always try. We talk about there's like the kids these days argument. The kids these days, they don't have it the same as we had it. Yeah, but like that's the thing. Society is changing. You can't stop it. The future's coming, whether we like it or not.
There is something to be said for being, playing in nature as a child. You know what I mean? It is. I see for myself, it was an important part of my upbringing, being outside, being being in nature, being surrounded by nature. And if kids don't have that, I think there is a significant disconnection from not society, because society is, as you said, an ongoing process, but there's a disconnection from the earth itself. Like, if you know what I mean, I'm not trying to get pseudo scientific on you, but there's a I don't know. I just feel that there is something to be said for having a connection to the earth and to nature that kids won't have, and it will very much limit their development.
Yeah, well, you never know what the world's going to be like in a few generations, Like, obviously it's good. I mean, you look at the physical body. You need exercise, and you need that time out in the sun and all that. You need your vitamin D's and all that. Like,
that's very.
But we do need that. But like, that's why it's hard, because there's no objective right to it all. Like, what if a child takes vitamin D pills?
Yeah.
He is on an exercise machine, and then he's just back on his social network. If everyone does it, it's tricky, isn't it? It's hard to know, it's hard to say that's wrong if everyone's going to be doing it, and I don't know,
okay, stuff like this. You often hear this argument about kids these days don't know. I saw an interesting picture. It was a meme going around that was a picture of some kids in the future, and they were looking down at a book on the floor, and they were saying, "What is that?" I didn't know what a book was. I obviously don't know how to use handwriting or to read a physical book. Everything's digitalized and on computers. And it makes you think, is that necessarily a bad thing?
No, because they could have their information on their phone or on their watch, and they almost don't need a book. Like, obviously, it's romantic to think about a book, but all a book is just words and ideas expressed in that specific literary form.
Yeah.
That it's not the be all and end all.
Okay, handwriting.
It's just a romantic way of looking at how it is now versus how it's going to be.
I think one of the biggest things to take into consideration when talking about this is the idea of what if technology isn't as stable as we think it is? What if all the computer systems did one day go down for whatever reason? Is it important to be able to have some sort of to be able to understand?
So you're talking about ethics and science,
even like handwriting. You know, like should you know if everything's being moved to computers? I hear that they're going to start doing VCE exams on computers within a few years. You know, so is that just the way it's going? Does it a pen's just becoming an outdated source of technology?
If it is, so be it. Less trees cut down for paper. Look at it that way. Why do we need that if we can type it like digitally?
True. When I was in school, there was no laptops on the desks then.
Nothing at all.
And now you go to school and there's iPads, there's laptops.
And I'm sure I know a lot of teachers, and a lot of teachers that are very close to me in my life that they talk about the decline of handwriting now with children.
Exactly. And of course they're going to say in a negative way, because it's part of their
what they're being taught
worldview.
To teach.
Your worldview is ingrained, and other worldviews as they emerge seem scary and frightening. I just made up an analogy. Think about when Henry Ford invented the first automobile. Mm-hmm. People going, yeah, but like it doesn't have the natural beauty of a horse. You know, the connection with an animal, the safety, and it's not mechanized, you know. But we look at it now and go, of course we moved on
more
from
efficient.
horses.
It's
more efficient. Yeah. Well, there you go. It's the same can be said about the pen, you know. Like
sure.
So you can look at it that way. You just have to go back and think, you know, or like,
and that
what is this light bulb invention? You know, you can't beat the element of fire and its warmth and its natural light. Yeah. Well, hooey to that, because technologies move forward. You know?
Hooey, huh?
Hooey.
I don't. You know what? I don't think.
I've never said hooey.
No. That's why I had to repeat it. I don't know. You lost me on hooey.
I'm aghast.
Yeah.
But, my choice of vocabulary.
Yeah. What was the conversation?
But yeah, well, I suppose I try, always talking about science, I try to, I suppose I try to be more open-minded to controversial and different types of science.
Just going back to what you were saying then about, you know, the car and
types of technologies, right?
The car and horse analogy. I suppose the ultimate goal of science and technology is to make things more efficient, right? To make things more user friendly and more I suppose automate. That's the end game, isn't it? To try to automate the majority of the industry to remove.
So there's no end game. There's no end game.
No,
it's just an entropic process that certain technologies fill niches where they appear. If the niches never appear, then those technologies will never exist. If certain funding backs certain technologies, and those technologies will be thrust into something, it's completely
what I mean by end game is to
how can you say there's an end game?
No. I mean to get to the point where humans aren't required to do manual labor anymore, to make everything as efficient as possible. As you say, going from horse and cart, where you have to control pretty much everything that's going on, to a car. Now they've got automatic cars. Cars are only getting easier to drive, more efficient, more comfortable, and that's just the aim of the game, isn't it? To make things easier for everyone.
As they get it seems to be like technology is getting smarter and smarter and smarter.
Yeah.
But does that make us smarter? Where does that leave majority of the population?
Yeah, that's it.
Like, do they start to get left behind in that? Because it seems like everything, say like maps and GPSs, for example. Mm-hmm. Back in the day, you had to read a map and you had to learn the way how to get there. Otherwise, you didn't get there. And now you just slap a GPS on the windscreen and it takes you there. You don't have to think about it anymore.
I remember reading that Einstein quote, and you know what? I'm not going to quote it directly because I don't remember it directly, but it was something along the lines of when technology takes over our humanity, we will be, you know, we'll see a world full of idiots. You know what I mean?
But I think that's still Einstein talking in the way that everyone talks about ingrained worldviews being pushed up against upcoming technologies, there's always going to be that fear. You said maps right then. As soon as you said maps, I thought, okay, well, map making, cartography is a technology in itself. Making a map, it was the process of a map that you used to read before your GPS was printed out, like using a whole host of techniques and things like that were labored and things like that. Before maps, there was just looking at stars or just picking a direction and going. So like, there's always
the coastline.
there's always going to be these steps that seem hard to cross, or you kind of think, was life better before that? Was life better before that? Was life better before that? And you can't really argue that.
I suppose
It wasn't better. It was just different.
You could look at it in the way that Richard Feynman did, and said perhaps the pursuit of science and the pursuit of truth will be like peeling back the layers of an onion. We're always going to think we're at the point where we've gone as far as we can go, but we're going to just be able to keep peeling back and keep figuring out more and keep learning more. And there's never, as you said, there's no end game. We're just going to get there. We're just going to keep figuring out more and more and more, because there's always more to figure out.
I think in Feynman specifically then was talking about the nature of reality. Whether we can find out the real truth about how everything works, the universe, or is it intrinsically more and more difficult the further you go, or can you never reach an end? Will there always be more and more to uncover? No one knows.
I do think that idea can be applied to technological advances as well, because the more we learn about, the more we learn, the more we can advance technology, and I think that will just be an ongoing process as well.
But as we said earlier, there's no fate, there's no destiny for technology. It's just happening. It's just all happening organically. The universe is just randomly spewing out more and more. We're just going on this path. We happen to have these technologies. We could get all wiped out by an asteroid, and then the technology talk gets cut right there. But when you were talking about, like, I suppose you touched upon, like, I suppose the ethics of science, and Einstein did talk about that too, about what's that quote about?
There's so many Einstein quotes that it's so hard to remember.
Yeah, I know, he's the best. He was a quote field, that one.
Yeah, he was too.
So I wish I could remember it. So science, technology is evolving quicker than our ability to understand its ramifications. I don't know if that's exact words, but if you think about that, that touches on the ethics of science and technology. So we right now, and I suppose Jeff Goldblum said it in Jurassic Park. You kept asking whether or not we could, and never stopped to think whether or not we should.
Yeah.
So we do these things. We make up these new inventions. We do this. We do that. And yes, some of those inventions might lead to a less mobile society, or might lead to a society, a less social by today's standard society and all that. Because there's no boardroom talking about the moral ethics really of technology. So that it's happening as free as evolution happens. It's a natural selection of technologies. It's not as if someone's picking and choosing which technologies to advance because they might be better for us in the future. We're just going for it,
So I guess to wrap up then, whenever in doubt, ask Jeff Goldblum.
I know, I always do. K-artician. Yeah. I watched Jurassic Park the other day.
It's still as good as ever.
That's a ripper.
Isn't it just a pearl? Yeah. Well, yeah. So basically, that's Michio Kaku talked about his life as a scientist and what the future of science may hold, and it's awesome hearing that type of stuff. It's definitely up our alley, and it was good to see. It was about 2,000 people there, all just as interested in the future of science and technology.
That's
and
it.
Physics, which is
anyone who stumbles across this video should definitely check him out.
Definitely.
If you haven't already heard of him, I'm sure
anyone who's managed to find their way here would have heard of him first. I'd hope.
Yeah, we hope so.
If not, you're
But on
welcome.
the odd chance, check him out.
Yeah,
They'll see how much we misrepresented everything you
Yeah,
said, and they'll
misrepresented his
close
name.
this window immediately.
Uh,
All right, cool.
Until next time.
yeah, there you go. Pondercast.